Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Strategic Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Monday, July 10th. And what an interesting day in terms of performance for the market. A few things to kind of go over in today's video. I will try to keep it brief, but we had some concepts that I want to go over. First things first, risk disclaimer. Everything that we're going through in this video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer right there. So number one, let's talk about what was impacting the market a bit last week, because I think that was one of the things that was nice, because we didn't have to worry about that so much. So that's one of the themes of the day, and that was the yields. So last week, TLT made this big sell-off move, about 3.5% last week. Today was nice. You could see what happened with TLT today. It was actually up about 1/10 of a percentage point. So just the volatility kind of quieted down a little bit there. And you could see if we look at yields, right? Because of course, when we're looking at TLT and talking about what's going on there with the price, right, that moves inversely with the yields. So today, you could see that the yields for the most part, and really kind of the 2, 3, 5 year had a big move down in the move in the yields, which was, again, it's when we talk about bonds and how they affect stocks, when you're really starting to see yields move up quickly, right? And again, this is not what the Fed is doing, right? This is the Fed, what they're controlling is the short end of the curve, the overnight rate. That's what we talk about when the Fed is raising interest rates or cutting interest rates. It's the overnight rate. Everything else moves with supply and demand. And that all affects things, in terms of the higher that the rates go, right, the more expensive equities get. So we don't, if you're an equity investor or an equity bull, you don't want to see interest rates really spike and the volatility really move up very quickly in treasury bonds. And you can kind of see what happened again today. The yields dropped pretty nicely. The MOVE index is the similar to the VIX for equities. If we look at the MOVE index, which is the volatility, right, you could see what happened last week. And I'll bring this up as a data line. This is not updated for today, but you could see, boom, you had a big move up in the volatility of treasuries and of interest rates. Again, nothing of what we've seen so far comparatively to March, but volatility did rise and steeper than what we saw in equity. So number one, that was one of the keys for today. Another thing that was very interesting for the day is what the Nasdaq is going to be doing to the NDX, the index that the Qs is benchmarked to, QQQ, right? They're going to be reweighting down some of those bigger components, right? You hear all the time in the media about the 7 stocks or the magnificent 7. I don't know who coined that, doesn't matter. But those big names are most likely going to be reweighted down. Now, we won't get the official announcement of what they're doing until I think it's Friday after the close. And then the following Friday is when all of the rebalance action will occur. However, like many trades and like many times when an index announcement is made, the move will happen as soon as the announcement or the rumor of the announcement is happening. Market participants will begin to kind of trade what that rebalance is what the criteria for the rebalance is. And if that's the case, right, you could see basically what happened. I'm not going to go through all 7 of those stocks, but Apple had a down. They all had down days for the most part. I'm sorry, they may not have all down days, but I think they all underperformed. Microsoft was down 1.6%, right? Tesla was down 1.7%. So as always, right, people don't wait to the actual event. When they have the information, they begin to trade on it. Overall, my opinion on this is, I understand what they're doing to decrease the index so it's not as top heavy. If you look at the weighting right now of the Qs. Right, and I'll bring this up for you. Whoops, I want the membership. There we go. And you could see that right now, Microsoft is 12%, Apple is also 12%, versus some of the other names are not even 1%. So it's been the case that you've heard this over the last few months. Oh, it's only 7 names driving the market. Well, that's not the case, because if you look at the performance, there's plenty of other names that are outperforming. They're just not a big market cap weight. So for example, when you go through and you look at a Palo Alto, right? A Palo Alto is only 0.5% of the index. It is just not going to have the same impact on the Qs or on the NDX as Microsoft is, because it's 0.5% weighting versus Microsoft is 13%. So I think what they're doing is going to try to straighten this out a little bit. Now, of course, you could do this as an individual investor. In fact, there's an ETF that you could buy that equally weights the same components. That's QQEW. Now, I think that's kind of interesting to kind of watch what happens for the day, because the Qs were flat for the day, and the QQEW, which is again same exact components but equally weighting them, was up 1.8% today, right? And where I think this is kind of interesting is this is a fresh breakout of the value area, and this may be pushing to new highs for the year if we continue to get another day like we got today. Where I think this QQEW could get to is 109.44, because that is an area of overhead supply, and that's a place that you might see a little bit of digestion in the trend, but you may not. Whenever we get to these areas of overhead supply, it's just going to be a little bit of a battle between new buyers and some sellers that have been waiting to kind of sell as we get to a high volume area of last year. All right, so that's a lot to kind of deal with today. But if you look at some of that performance, that is one of the contributing factors of why some of the smaller names did so well. Also, when you look at the IWM for today, that was strong all day today. Breadth was hung in there all day today. So even while the Qs and the S&P was selling off a little bit, the small caps were very strong for the day, and they hung in there quite nicely for the day. So really interesting. Of course, I will always look at some levels to watch in the short term to kind of give you a sense of what's going on. But if you look at where the S&P closed, right at this 44.46, right, we do pay attention to the S&P 500 because it is, a huge, it's the biggest companies out there, and it's the most widely tracked index in the world. So we do pay attention to it, but I'm really watching this 44.46.5 level. If we break into value, which we kind of paused right there, then I think this could be a nice week that we have on our hands. If we fail and start to go back lower and we break the 20-day moving average, then you know that we've something is changing in the marketplace. But for now, I think overall, you probably, if you go through your individual names, are quite pleased with the performance, provided that you look outside of those 5 or 6, 7 names that are so large in the index. Also, 44.71 is a level that I would like to see us get back above. Note that on Friday that got rejected there. And then just going back to the Qs here really quickly, which were flat for the day, I would also watch this 371 level 26, and then also watch right where we closed was at the bottom of value 366.90. Again, why are these levels important? Because that's the value area for the week, and that value area for the week, that bottom of value 366.90, is derived from all of last week's activity, all that volume, all that price activity, right? And if we draw support and resistance roughly around 1 standard deviation of all that activity, that's where we're getting that 366.90, and that becomes significant, right? When you start to do statistics like that, there's a reason why things become so statistically significant. Let's jump to some individual names. So if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, what I would say is go ahead to go to TribecaTradeGroup.com. We are still providing a coupon code for new members. This is only for new members, right? Where you can get half off your first month as an introductory rate, so that you can basically see what it's like to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group. And I believe that if you put in, it's to that TTG 2023 is the coupon code, but this is what you get every weekend from us, right? I have this all built into Bloomberg API, giving us a sense of I basically customize a watch list every week. Some of the names are carryover, which just didn't trigger and went sideways for a bit, versus and then new names, right? And you could see how well. And what we're looking at here is not just the performance change from the day, but we're looking at from the trigger. Where does the trigger derive from, right? Well, going back to value areas and volume at price, we're looking for statistically significant breakouts of areas, right? So for example, a couple names that did really well. This is Broadcom. We'll kind of start with this one, but this was a name that, we got a nice heads up last week because it saw some call activity last week, right? And some of the semis, which by the way, the whole semi ETF saw call buying too last week. But, this was one of those situations where, I was kind of looking at this and saying, hey, maybe the 20-day moving average might get violated here, right? But for now, it seems like this wants higher, right? This is a name that had strong earnings, settled back in, broke higher, settled back in, broke higher, or almost to taking out the previous peak, something that we're going to watch out for this name to do. And now we want to see if this thing could stay above 874.64, but really nice move by Broadcom. Another name from last week too that I want to watch, and I think this should be on here, but maybe here it is right here. So it has not officially triggered yet, right? But still, and I'll get an alert when it does trigger. But Salesforce, right? Salesforce was a name that I tried last week when I was on vacation. I tried it right here and then was a little bit unlucky because it sold off the next day. But I want to see a clean break of this value area, which is 213.76. A lot of times what happens is a name just is not ready to go yet, and it will bounce around back and forth, and the proper thing to do is just start a position on one of these tries or attempts to break higher. But it's just not ready to do it yet. So for now, what do? You can kind of have a starter position on, but pay attention to when it breaks this coiling, this consolidation at 213.76. This is another name that saw a decent amount of call buying today too. It saw some like smaller bites of some shorter dated calls, right? And then we saw this nice call buyer come in here right at the end of the day, 3,000 of the March 230 calls. This is a chunky size trade here, guys. The open interest is 663. So this is an opening trade for $2.8 million. Really nice. Like I said, there was some smaller stuff in here too. July 220 calls that went up for $1.20, only an $80,000 bet, but this has size behind it, right? So again, a lot of times for me, the option activity just gives me a heads up that somebody's positioning. Really, I'm just plugging that into my system, and if it meets my criteria and it matches up, then I will go long. Right. And then just other names that performed well. This was a carryover name from last week. Upstart, even though it didn't close very well, and the most of the market did not close well on Friday, but it hung in there and it stayed above its value area. So again, I find that significant that even though it sold off from the highs, it did not lose support. Really nice. This name was up 12%. So I got rewarded for holding that one and being patient with that one. I mentioned Tesla, and I didn't come back to it. I apologize, but I know this is a heavily watched name. I actually said I would be open to a little bit of a pullback. I'm bullish this name longer term. So, I don't know if this, it looks like it almost filled the gap here from when they announced their delivery. So very, very close, but I'll give you a nice level to watch here. It's this 269.31. Notice that it stayed above, right? That's bullish. So again, I would be patient with it. With this rebalance that's happening, it might be a little bit choppy for a bit, but if you've got the patience for it, I think as long as it stays above this 269 level, I'm interested in it. Again, my ultimate target, there's a VPOC up here at 288, which will be like an intermediate target. And then my longer term target, I say longer term, but still this year, is 320 to the upside. All right. So that's Tesla, a few other names. And again, these are kind of just names that were on our watch list, but I like this Symbotic, right? This is a newer name for me, but I like the fact that it made a higher low here and a nice move here, right? There's going to be some resistance at 48.21. If you don't know what this company does, I don't blame you, because I just learned what it does the other day. But this is involved in factory automation equipment, operates as an automation technology company, right? Specializes in supply chain with its end-to-end AI powered, notice they throw in the AI, powered robotic and software platform. I like it. It's a speculative name, of course, but right now this market has momentum in these areas, and I like it as long as it stays above this 42.82. Notice in my trading, right? I'm not making predictions. I have support and resistance levels to make decisions off of. No crystal ball reading or anything like that. A few other names that I thought were interesting. This IoT came into support and it needed to hold. And what I'm referring to is the daily chart, right? This name was kind of hanging by a thread here. Buyers came in support of this. You have a nice bullish candle, bullish engulfing candle, right? And I think this looks pretty interesting in here, right? Watch for a move to see if it could stay above 27.28 to close right around that level. All right. So that's where it is. It says 27.25, but I thought it closed a little bit higher than that. But that's on the 1 hour chart. Oh, maybe the close, maybe it's trading up a little bit after hours. It's also have to get through that virgin point of control, but provided that it does, maybe it can launch up to about that 29.70 level. Another name too that saw a little bit of call buying today too is Cloudflare. This is not a name that really is one of my favorite names, but I do pay attention to a name when it does see some call buying. Bullish engulfing there too. Note you're going to have some resistance at 68.80. A couple other names, Datadog. All right, Datadog is trying to resolve higher after it's consolidated a bit, and there's still a VPOC lingering up there at 107.49. Adobe, right, has gone. I love these tight consolidation type charts. I took advantage of this. I use this as a day trade today, but ultimately this sideways price action and this super thin value area indicating compression, tight price action, and there could be a nice move coming and possibly resulting higher here for Adobe. All right, DraftKings. I know a lot of people were looking at this name today. I did not trade this one, up 8%, up to the VPOC, right? Very similar to another name that, that will be interesting to watch from here, which is Carvana. Watch to see if it can stay above this virgin point of control right at 32.37. Again, high short interest name, so you don't know if shorts are done covering this name. And then last group to maybe talk about, we'll cover one more. Palantir, again, nice level to watch here, 16.08. You know where you're going to be right, you know where you're going to be wrong, and you can try along here, in my opinion, versus 16.08. The crypto space, even though crypto stocks are not, sorry, I said this backwards, right? Even though Bitcoin is not launching higher, we're seeing a lot of the Bitcoin stocks act really well. RIOT blockchain, whoops, wrong symbol. RIOT blockchain had another strong move. Talk about being coiled up here and a move out of the coiling. RIOT blockchain has that going on. It looks really nice on the daily chart. Also on the weekly chart, it is now breaking above its value area, which is 1394, something that I highlighted last week. Another one that I like too is this MicroStrategy. Similar looking chart, similar breakout, right? That's 358.99. A little bit of a harder name to trade, but you've got the same thing going on there, right? And of course, Mara was the first one to kind of lead this group, I thought, and that's been making a nice move outside of the value area. All right, guys, that is it. Again, if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group and you want to be kind of prepared for the week, what I would do is sign up, and you can get half off your first month. Again, notice what we're doing here, right? We're putting together names. I didn't even go through the flooring names today, which acted really well. I actually had AZEK on my watch list, but I actually traded what's the name that Trex, right? Trex had a really nice move. So, sometimes you can kind of spot really nice, move back to the top of value. So bought the dip into the 20-day moving average. This thing was up 5% today. So acted really nice. But, we're also watching some of the, some of the oil services names that had a really strong day on Friday. Perhaps they might need a little bit of time to digest. One that saw some call buying, which will go on the watch list, will be MTDR. I'll fill that out for members later. But we're constantly adding to the watch list, and as we see new names perk up and show some strength. All right, many other groups to cover, but I want to keep this video short. Guys, have a great night, and I'll see you in the trading room.